You're listening to the Joe and Rosa Show, proclaiming the gospel through word and through song.
Hi, and welcome to the Joe and Rosa Show. I'm Joe.
And I'm Rosa.
And with us today we have Prolife speaker Rebecca Keissling from Save the 1%. How are you doing today, Rebecca?
Oh, I'm good, thanks.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today on the Joe and Rosa Show. So when you say you refer to Save the 1%, can you tell our audience what exactly does that mean?
Well, some of our logos, it says Save the 1%, but our name is actually Save the One. And it comes from a couple of places. In the pro-life movement, people say that we're only 1%, that the so-called hard cases in the abortion debate, people like me, conceived in rape, or those who were given a challenging prenatal diagnosis, are the so-called hard cases, and they'll say, well, each one of those represents 1%. And then there's an unfortunate motto in the pro-life movement that you save the 99 in exchange for the one. And, of course, I can't help but thinking of the parable of lost sheep, because Jesus was all about saving the one, leaving the 99 to save the one. And so that's where our name comes from. It's a biblical name, biblical principle.
Absolutely. So why does it come into play at all that the pro-life movement has the idea that there has to have an exchange at all? Where does that idea come from?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, Scripture talks about man's wisdom, and, in their own estimation, they think that they have to compromise in order to get things done. But that really has to do with the issue of protecting politicians. And we only have rape exceptions when we have rape exception politicians, and we only have rape exception politicians because you're giving out PAC endorsements to those rape exception politicians. And because we have ultimately leaders who are willing to compromise their values on the rape exception. Georgia completely transformed their state about 15 years ago when they stopped with this mentality. When they changed their board, they lost half their board over the issue. They were mentored by Right to Life of Michigan, who is a no exceptions, no compromise organization. We've never had a rape exception in any laws in Michigan. And any pro-life bills we pass don't discriminate against the people group. And so, Georgia totally transformed their state, where they only had one politician who had no exceptions. And 10 years later, when Dan Becker wrote his book on personhood, and he showed that, being pure is pragmatic. It's the most pragmatic approach, that when you get rid of the mediocre politicians, or when you set the bar high, many of them, they'll meet that bar, and then you'll transform your state, and they end up passing some of the best laws in the nation. They have a majority in the House and the Senate now who are all 100% pro-life, and all of their elected officials on statewide, like governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, are all pro-life.
Okay, so what can people at the grassroots level, like the common people, do to encourage their politicians in their state to be more pro-life and to be more about saving the one?
Well, we actually have a 5-state study on messaging, and it shows that the most effective way to change hearts on this issue is to invoke a story, a real story of either a woman who's conceived in rape, and the men's stories are compelling too, just there was a little bit of advantage with a woman's story. It's just, I guess, the way it is for some people. And either a woman who was conceived in rape or a woman who became pregnant by rape. And then secondly, the best argument was to invoke the sense of justice that, this is America, and in a civilized society, we don't punish innocent people for someone else's crime. It's unjust to give the death penalty to the innocent child. Rapists don't get the death penalty. So that's really the best pure argument. So you can incorporate those two and tell the story of a woman and then say she did not deserve to die for the rapist crime, And that's what really changes hearts and minds. I've changed the heart of Governor Rick Perry when he was running for president and Newt Gingrich. So if you can do that under those circumstances, you can change the heart of your legislator.
Absolutely. And so you speak about the power of story, of testimony. Would you mind sharing with our listening audience what your testimony is with regard to the rape exception?
Sure. I was adopted, and I learned at 18 that I was conceived. My birth mother was abducted at knife point by a serial rapist. I met her. She was happy to meet me, but she told me the horrible circumstances. And she was pro-choice when we met, even though she was so happy to meet me. She told me that if it had been legal, she would have aborted me, and in fact, she tried to kill me at 2 illegal abortions, and I was almost aborted, but the fact that it was illegal caused her to back out. She was afraid for her own safety. And so I literally owe my birth to the law being there to protect me. 6 years later, after we met, she changed her mind. And now, decades later, we are both thankful that we were both spared the horror of abortion.
Absolutely. What a powerful story. And I had seen testimonies of, I actually read the story there of your meeting with Ted Cruz and with other powerful politicians. And so behind all this, to me, it seems like the heart of it is that we, or most of us, will say we're pro-life, but except for rape, except for incest, except for things. If you're having a child that's born like any other child, if it's not interfered with, why do people differentiate at all and say, well, yeah, we believe in saving life, except if it's rape or incest? Why do people even do that at all?
Well, I understand that people want to show they care about rape victims, but, if you really care about a rape victim, you should want to protect her from the rapist and from the abortion and not the baby. The baby is not the scary enemy. The fact is, the only studies ever done on this shows that the woman is 4 times more likely to die within the next year after the abortion. It perpetuates an abusive situation. We know that rapists love abortion. Perpetrators of incest love abortion, and so do sex traffickers, because the abortion destroys the evidence and it allows them to keep perpetrating on her.
So actually, in advocating that that's what a rape victim should do, we are actually colluding with the people who have abused them to begin with.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness, yes, absolutely. And the other thing is that the majority of rape victims choose life. They actually choose abortion at half the rate of the average unplanned pregnancy. 25% choose adoption, 50% parent their children. Only 1% choose adoption in your average unplanned pregnancy. So they're really choosing adoption instead of abortion. And these women are grieved. I can tell you, because we have a database of over 400. They are grieved every time someone calls their child the child of a rapist. Because their position is, how dare they say that? This is my child. This is the child of a rape victim. And yet all you ever hear is child of a rapist child. Excuse me, rape victim's child. How dare you?
So let me ask you, given that we just had our elections at the time that we're recording this, nationally they've said that Republicans on the right, and especially pro-life, has done very well, apparently where the Republicans have a majority in the House and the Senate and the presidency, and have done quite well in governor's elections and state senates and houses. Do you think that will help passing more pro-life legislation on a state and, more importantly, a federal level?
Well, in the last few years, we've passed more pro-life legislation at the state level than ever before, and almost every single one of them has no exceptions. I think it's like 86% of pro-life bills introduced at the state level have no exceptions, and it's like 77%, I believe, that when they're passed, they have no exceptions. So at the state level, they're doing pretty well. But the problem is Congress. It's just horrible, because you don't have leadership like you have at the state level, where they're really holding their legislators accountable and making sure that they don't have a rape exception when they endorse them. And the policies of the national organizations allow for the rape exception. They'll say, oh, we're no exceptions, but they allow it. And you'll get 100% if you introduce a rape exception like Eric Cantor did. So it's a huge problem. Donald Trump says that he's going to defund Planned Parenthood, but the problem is that the last defund Planned Parenthood bill has a rape exception in it. Like, how is it even workable? And it's just so insulting because, Lila Rose Live Action did these exposés on how Planned Parenthood and abortion clinics cover up rape and enable traffickers. And so why would you even trust them with a rape victim?
Mm-hmm. Wow. That is absolutely unreal. Can you tell our audience about your organization, Save the One, what it is that you do, and your involvement with helping to pass legislation through your testimony?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a database of over 400, as I said, with the rape-related stories, birth mothers, conceived in rape or incest, mothers from rape raising their children, some who miscarried, and others who are post-abortive from rape, and they're precious to us, and they give their testimonies how truly the abortion was worse than the rape. And then, so we raise awareness, we get our stories out, and we cover also the challenging prenatal diagnosis, so-called fetal abnormalities, which usually are, often are not fatal. And so we get these stories. We have a blog. We have our Facebook page where we do memes and when we highlight all of these stories that are in the news. We really specialize in the so-called hard cases in the abortion debate, the ones whom Jesus would call the least of these. And then we are available to testify. And like I said, I have a database, so I keep track of these stories and what states they're in so that they can be available to testify. But we also have people worldwide, even in Africa, who share their stories. And now we have a Spanish division, over 22,000 followers in 1 year on Facebook. And we have a Portuguese division we launched in this summer, and now we have a Polish division that we're launching. So we try to get these stories out globally. We send them on for publications to like Life News, LifeSite News, Live Action, and in other languages like major publications, so that we can pierce the darkness and get our stories told, because you have so many voices who are heard, but when does the voice of the least of these ever get heard? So that's our goal, is to have our voices heard and make a difference. We also have a support group for people who need help with, they're struggling with the issues related to, being part of these stories. So we have various groups on Facebook and support groups that are confidential. And then we also have the activism groups for people who really want to get involved.
So if there's somebody who's listening to the radio and they have been raped, or they have a loved one who has been raped, there's often a lot of pressure. And I know this firsthand. There's often a lot of pressure from people that basically the next step is to have an abortion. But if you were speaking into the life of somebody who's at that threshold, what would you say to that person?
Well, first I have to listen to them. So I have to hear what their story is, and I need to hear what their concerns are, what their fears are. Most abortions, well, almost all abortions really are fear-driven. Women don't have abortions because they hate babies. They're afraid. And I know what many of the rape victims, from our organization, many had contemplated, at least briefly, abortion. And so I understand their fears. And they need to be encouraged. They need to know that they're capable of great love. And that's normal to love your child. And, of course, babies are born so cute, None of them look at their child and think, oh, monster, right? And then their heart is just broken that they even contemplate it. And so they need to know that they're going to be helped. Some of them are afraid about the rapist being involved in their life. In my other organization, Hope After Rape Conception, we advocate on behalf of them. We've gotten laws passed, the Rape Survivor Child Custody Act, to protect them from the rapist. And so they just need a little guidance to make sure that they're going to be protected. Sometimes they need to know about adoption laws, and sometimes, they just need help like any other woman in an unplanned pregnancy. So referrals to pregnancy resource centers so that they can get, their financial needs met and get maternity clothes, baby clothes, formula, diapers, whatever their needs are.
Absolutely, they do need help with a variety of things. And so, since I'm just tempted to ask this because rape and incest, conception through rape, is thrown around a lot of times, and people use it for political discussion and for different things, but you almost never hear the testimony of somebody who was conceived in rape. And so I would just ask you, as our second to last question, since you are here and you're alive and you can speak on that, since you would actually be the voice of the little one that people contemplate aborting, how do you feel that that God used your life, and what are your thoughts on that as the voice of somebody who has been conceived in rape?
I'm so thankful that my life was spared. I really am. But the most selfish thing I could do would just be to say, oh, well, my life was spared. So, too bad for the others, right? And sometimes well-meaning Christians would say, oh, you see, God really meant for you to be here. But I know that God intends for every unborn child to be given that same opportunity. And so I feel like my life was spared for a purpose, which is to go back and save others and to see that they can be protected the same way I was protected. And that is the calling on my life, as well as to mentor others, to bring healing to others, because I struggled with those issues of value, identity, and purpose, and I felt worthless when I was younger. And I came to know my worth in Christ, to know that God created me in His image, on purpose, for a purpose. And so I want to give other people that same hope that I had, and knowing who I am in Christ. So those are my passions, to go back and save others, to help others to know their worth, to love others, to help them get their stories out, to mentor others, to get involved, to do what I'm doing so that we can have a whole army of people mobilized. That's God's calling on my life.
Wow, that is awesome. Well, Rebecca, let me ask you, where can our listeners find you and your ministry online?
Our website is SaveTheOne.com, and that's the number one, not the word one. You'll see our blog link there, but that's SaveTheOne.blogspot.com. And, of course, on Facebook, Save the One. And we put out great stuff all the time. Our Spanish division is even better. They're really amazing. By the way, nobody gets paid with Save the One. It's all volunteer. I don't get paid. Nobody gets paid with Save the One. We do have a couple of dozen national speakers. And, when we speak at pregnancy center fundraisers, we get paid for that sort of thing. But what we do day in, day out, no for any of that. And I travel overseas worldwide, but I don't get paid. But I want to have an impact. And so I hope that you'll go check out our stuff and share our memes, share the articles we post, because you could help so much just by getting the word out.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca Keissling, for being with us today on the Jo and Rosa Show.
Thank you.